Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for spending your lunch time with us today. As Patricia mentioned, I'm a family and consumer science agent. That means I'm teaching everything that is health and wellness and involve human behavior to improve human behavior. And I work with IFAS. A lot of people say, what is IFAS in the University of Florida? IFAS stands for the Institute of Food and Agriculture Science. We provide research-based knowledge from the university out to the local level through our county extension offices and into our communities. Our mission is to provide resources to enhance and sustain a high quality of life. My office is located here in this county, Manatee County. I'm down south of Gainesville, across the strait from Jupiter and very far away from Panama City for the people that I saw there, but we covered all the 67 counties in Florida. And we have different research centers as well. Please feel free to reach your local extension office for any kind of information that you want. Of course, University of Florida is an equal opportunity institution. What we are going to learn today is how does nutrition relate to successful aging? First and foremost, the nutrients in our diets are needed to meet our nutritional needs for cell and tissue maintenance and regulation of all body processes. Eating the right amount of food to balance calories, taking in calories burned through activities of the daily living and exercise helps promote a healthy body weight. For some older adults, this means focusing on getting enough to eat, and for others, it means avoiding calories excess, since obesity is associated with the risk of type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease, mostly for CVD, both of which are diseases associated with aging. Maintaining a healthy weight and avoiding obesity are important factors in healthy aging. In addition of reducing obesity as a risk factor for age-related chronic disease, eating a healthful diet also directly contributes to reduce risk for these diseases. Investigations into the role of a healthful diet throughout life in prevention of cognitive decline and intriguing lines of research, interactions between nutrition and other factors such as stress, yeah, normal life, living, work, genetic variability likely affect brain development and susceptibility to cognitive decline and dementia. So those are the things that we are going to see during this webinar. When we are talking about critical nutrients, these are the critical nutrients that we need to incorporate. Plus, of course, although all the 50 nutrients are needed by the human body are important, these 7 nutrients that you can see here in the screen are the particular concern for the aging population, mainly related to the psychological changes that occur as we age. So as you can see, water, protein, dietary fiber, calcium, vitamin D, vitamin B12, and zinc. And we are going to go for every one of these during the presentation. So a lot of people start to thinking, why nutritional risk increase with age? Because we have physiological changes. Yes, our body composition change. We are going to have tooth, mouth problems. I'm glad that somebody for the College of Dentistry is here. They can expand. GI tract infections and disease, sensory losses, immune function, and renal function. I sometimes even don't remember where I put my keys, and I try to say, where are my keys? I start to looking for things like that. So what are the variations of the aging process? What we do know is that variations in the aging process and the presence of major chronic disease that affect health and longevity are influenced by genetics, lifestyle, environmental factors, life circumstances, and interactions among all of these. In fact, there is a field of study called nutritional genomics that focuses on the interactions between the human genome and a diet and nutrition. Despite the fact that the physiological changes we are going to be looking and clearly occur at different age at varying rates in different people. They are changes that commonly occur as men as women age, and they do affect nutritional risks. So it's important to be aware of them. We'll start with age-related changes in body composition. Genetics is something that varies according to individuals, sometimes in countries as well. And all those are related, as I already mentioned. So something that we need to see the critical nutrients that I already mentioned, we need to start to focus and incorporate those to our diet. We need to start to promote those in our daily intakes. We are going to start for the first one, water. We have seen that dehydration can be a problem for older adults. So the need to stay hydrated is pretty clear. The adequate intake for total of water for person that are older than 19 years old is 3.7 liters per day for men and 2.7 liters for women. This includes about 13 cups for males, that is the equivalent of the 3 liters, and 9 cups for females, that is the equivalent of 2.2 liters. These cups are 8 ounces glasses of water. The primary source of water to fulfill our need for this nutrient are fluids that we drink. Water or other non-sugar beverage are the best. Please specify no sugary. Current recommendations are for adults who already drink alcoholic beverage to limit their intake to 2 drinks a day for men and only 1 for women. But this might be more than older people should have due to their decreased calorie needs. As people age, it's important for every calorie to be associated with nutrients that help to meet their nutritional requirement. An alcoholic beverage basically provides calories and nothing but calories. Another concern is excessive alcohol consumption, which is not uncommonly among older adults but often is veiled in secrecy. Excessive drinking can cause major health problems, interact with prescription and over-the-counter medications, and can cause confusion and forgetfulness, which may be mistaken for Alzheimer's disease or other cognitive impairments. In addition to fluids that we drink, the foods we eat, especially fruits and vegetables, provide water that helps to meet the requirement for this nutrient. And lastly, metabolic reactions in the body that keep us alive and functioning produce metabolic water, which also contributes to the daily water requirement. A lot of people start to think, so what about my coffee? That counts? Yes. Many people believe that caffeine-containing beverages do not contribute to hydration, but according to the Institute of Medicine, this is not the cause and the case. Contrary to popular belief, caffeine-containing beverages such as coffee or tea actually do contribute to hydration. Still, it's best to drink a variety of fluids, including those without caffeine. Could you please write in the chat how many of you do you prefer coffee or tea? Share that with us, please, if you want. This is only for curiosity. Let me see, what are you guys writing?
We have a spread of tea and coffee.
Okay. I asking you because I'm from Colombia. And a lot of people say, okay, I don't supposedly drink coffee. I drink tea. So that was curiosity. So thank you. Thank you for doing that.
I'm with Patricia and Lee, coffee in the morning and tea in the evening.
Okay, that's suited. Sometimes once in a while I have coffee. Yes, it's normal. So I want to encourage you to have fluid intakes. Please have a glass of water first thing in the morning, as I showing you here in the slide. And when we are taking medications, we need to take those with a full glass of water. Don't take medications with empty stomach. And have water when you are outside. Sometimes during the summer, when we are outside doing activities, we forget to drink water. And if we are outside with the high temperature and humidity that is in here in Florida, we should be drinking every 15 minutes. Okay? And a lot of people say, I don't like the water. I really don't like the taste. You can do infusion water. Is slide a couple of fruits and put in the water. You put the container in the refrigerator. After 4 hours, the water has the infuse of the fruits or even mint, things that you want to put there, and drink your water. That is an alternative I can suggest for you that is beneficial for a lot of individuals. They don't want the plain water flavor. So let's going to move to proteins. Due to age-related change in our body composition, metabolism, immune function, hormone levels, and disease states, all of which can affect protein requirements, older adults may have a higher protein need than younger adults, along with a lower calorie requirement. Inadequate protein intake is an issue for older adults who aren't eating an adequate amount of food or who are chronically ill. Additionally, some older individuals may limit their intake of protein-rich foods due to financial constraints, chewing difficulties, or lactose intolerance. I want that you focus here what happened when we have underconsumption. I explaining here in the slide the inadequate food intake, chronic, we can get sick, the financial constraints I already explained that, and chewing difficulties because of gums of teeth, and yes, lactose intolerance. We develop sometimes that with age, and that affects almost all the ethnicities, so it's something common across the border. Protein intake. Another concern for older adults at risk for obesity and related chronic disease is the type of protein foods that are chosen. Higher fat choices like fatty meats and full fat dairy foods. Eating in excess can easily lead to unwanted weight gain and increased risk of diabetes and cardiovascular diseases. These are lower fat protein food choices. Fatty fish like salmon is recommended for heart health. And something that I want to mention here is seafood. Seafood is very, very, very good to consume for the values of omega-3 and the issues they have with the brain is very good to prevention of Alzheimer's disease and dementia. So please do that. And yes, we need to remove all the skin for the poultry when we are consuming. Another curiosity, do you guys, when you are, what is your protein preferred? Could you please share that with us in the chat as well? So when we do eat most of our protein, usually it's at dinner. This may be not ideal, especially for older adults who do not utilize dietary amino acids for protein synthesis and efficiently as younger adults. So when the amount of the essential amino acid is low, as in low protein meal, the typical meal pattern will allow for maximal skeletal muscle protein synthesis to occur only after the evening meal. This amount of protein contains approximately 10 grams of essential amino acids, which are the ones required for protein synthesis, as which many other nutrients, more of the always better. In fact, we have limited capacity to store protein in excess for our current needs. We don't have an adequate storage compound for amino acids as we do for glucose. that we call glycogen, and fatty acids, adipose tissue, triglycerides. So we maintain our excess amino acids as proteins within our skeletal muscle. In times of greater need for protein, such as when we are fasting or critically ill, we lose muscle mass and function. Also, we can only use a certain amount of dietary amino acids to synthesize body proteins, more than about 30 grams of protein at a meal with no enhanced protein synthesis. So, Patricia, what kind of protein is the one they are mentioning in the chat?
I think chicken is the most popular, but there's like chicken, salmon, tuna, steak, um, meat and cheese, and
Okay, so
pork.
now everyone has a homework. Start to go into the seafood session and start to buying something during this week that you can consume to try to increase your omega-3 consumption. Thank you.
There was a question that came through, is are omega supplements just as good as eating fish?
We are going to talk about supplements in a moment. Give me a moment because I have a slide with that one, okay?
Thank you.
But that, if to answer your question, everything that we want to take, they needs to be consulted with your primary doctor because he or she knows you personally and knows the kind of medication that you are taking. And we need to read, and they need to read all the and label in the supplement that you are taking. So this be consulted with your doctor. So a lot of people start to taking high quality protein. I already mentioned about the muscle. Essential amino acids are the ones that we cannot synthesize in our bodies, and therefore we need to get them from the foods that we eat. Animal-based protein sources provide all the essential amino acids that are considered complete or high-quality protein foods. Most plant sources of protein do not provide all the essential amino acids, so vegetarians need to eat a variety of protein-containing foods. However, the old rule about eating complementary protein source as each meal is no longer recommended, as long as you eat a variety of protein source during the day or even over the course of several days, you will have a complete amino acid pool, which will be used to synthesize the proteins that you need. Now we are going to jump to the next concern, that is dietary fiber. The second critical nutrient for older adults is dietary fiber. Looking back in history, sometimes in the 2nd century, the prominent Greek physician Galen allowed to dietary fiber when he compared brown bread to white bread by saying there are foods that excite the bowels to evacuate and those that prevent them. It is safe to say that Galen didn't know what brown bread contained that made it healthier for the gut than white bread, but now we do. It was a dietary fiber. The various types of dietary fiber are complex and they are called carbohydrates that are not broken down by human digestive enzymes in the small intestine. These fibers continue through the GI tract into the colon, where bacterial enzymes break them down into absorbable components, either in part or completely, depending on the type of fiber. The major concern related to low dietary fiber intake is constipation, which is common in older adults, especially in those living with long-term care facilities, where the prevalence of constipation may be as high as 80%. Among free living adults aged 65 years and older, the prevalence is about 26% for women and 16% for men, rising to about one-third of women and one-fourth for men in those aged of 84 and older. Low fiber intake is common in this country, including among older adults. Eating bread that looks like this contributes to low fiber intake and increased risk for constipation. Unfortunately, popular supplements often are not helpful. So somebody was talking about the supplements in the past for this dietary concern. is not helpful. When we are talking about the health benefits of fiber, consuming adequate dietary fiber offers numerous health benefits. We have seen the fiber promotes movement of gut contents through the GI tract, allowing for easy laxation. Recent reviews and meta-analysis of fiber research have support a role for higher intakes of fiber in maintaining normal blood glucose levels and reducing risk for diabetes. Also, higher fiber intake is associated with a lower risk for cardiovascular disease, which is the number one cause of death in the United States. The Institute of Medicine said an adequate intake for fiber of 14 grams per 1,000 calories consumed. A lot of people say, what is this 14 grams? A slice of bread. Few Americans consume this amount of fiber. So I encourage you to fiber intake. To get the various types of fiber that provide the array of health benefits we have discussed, it's recommended that we eat a variety of fiber containing foods like this every day. I put in here what are those kind of food. I mentioned for you whole grain breads and cereals, oatmeal and oat bran, legumes, fruits and vegetables. It can be challenging for older adults who might have a limited food intake to get enough fiber in their diet for optimal health. You may take a few minutes to think about your usual diet and consider whether or not you are likely to be getting the fiber that we need. There are a lot of apps and other resources that can be used to calculate your calorie intake and help you keep track of your food and nutrient intake. I'm not recommending an app in particular. There are several ones. You choose the ones that is more beneficial for you. And if you want to see something like that, Patricia, do you share with the audience the resources?
Not yet. Which one would you like me to drop? The
I my plate in my plate is a government organization website that has a lot of recipes. You can go to see according to your gender, according to your age, even for your kids, what kind of food, everything that you need. And they mention a few of the apps that are there that you can check. That's something I will encourage you to check. Patricia
I
will be
dropped the
sharing
link in
this.
the chat.
Thank you. She will be sharing that with you. This is perfect. This is for everything that you want. That is my to go number one website for all the programming in nutrition and food safety I provide. That is my one to go. So we are going to the other concern that is calcium. The need for calcium increases as adults age, just when many people decrease their intake of foods that contain calcium. The recommended dietary allowance for calcium increased for 1,000 milligrams per day to 1,200 milligrams per day at age 51 for women and at age 71 for men. The dietary calcium intake of many older adults, especially women, is below 1,200 milligrams per day and often falls below 1,000 milligrams. Calcium from supplements provides an average about 300 milligrams per day, helping to meet these recommendations. And another concern is that absorption of calcium tends to decrease with age. This is why the recommended intake of calcium is higher in older adults. It helps compensate for the fact that a lower percentage of the calcium consuming is absorbed. Some medications commonly taken by older adults, like diuretics and blood pressure medications, can affect calcium absorption or excretion. Individuals concerned about their bone health can consult with a pharmacist to determine if any of their medications may impact their calcium status. So, fortunately, there are quite a few dietary sources of calcium. including dairy products, which is the major contributor of calcium in the U.S. diet. Current dietary guidelines recommend selecting low-fat or fat-free milk and dairy products rather than full-fat types in order to keep calorie intake moderate, both for weight management and to reduce saturated fat intake, which is related to cardiovascular disease risk. Selecting low-fat dairy foods is especially important for older adults as calorie needs to decrease with age, while recommended intakes of calcium and vitamin D are higher. Other sources of calcium include tofu, if it's processed with calcium, canned salmon and sardines. If you eat the bones, and green vegetables like kale, broccoli, seaweed, and others. Although it contains lots of nutrients and is very popular, spinach is not a good calcium source because it's very high in oxalic acid, a substance that combines with calcium to form calcium oxalate, a salt that is not well absorbed. Other greens are better calcium source because they contain less oxalic acid. Legumes and dried fruit also provide a source of calcium. Fortified breads, cereals, orange juice, and other beverages can be essential source of this mineral, especially if a person does not drink milk. So that is an array that we can check. Vitamin D, the other concern that we have. There are questions, Patricia, or I continue?
I'm not seeing any. Well, actually, sorry. What's a good brand of seaweed?
We don't recommend brands in specific. So my suggestion is taste, and you, for the flavor, for the aroma, for your taste, you can choose. I have done a lot of tryouts, and usually the ones that certain individuals have in certain restaurants and they prepare there are excellent. And here in Manatee County, we have a lot of seafood producers, so that we can go to taste the fresh things. So brands, I'm so sorry, no. Go to explorers, go to taste when there are those taste demonstrations to see which one do you prefer. The main the main concern in relation to vitamin D is not having a sufficient level of the vitamin in the blood. Older adults are at risk for vitamin D insufficiency or deficiency due to several factors. First, many older adults don't get very much vitamin D in their diets. Since the recommended dietary intake of vitamin D increases with age, this is a concern. Persons that are 19 to 70 years old have a daily recommended intake of 15 micrograms, corresponding to 600 international units. For those over age 70, the recommended intake goes up to 20 micrograms or 800 international units a day. Humans are able to synthesize vitamin D in the skin in the presence of sunlight, but many older persons limit their sunlight exposure for a variety of concerns and reasons. These may include limited mobility, fear of going outdoors due to high crime rates, social isolation, or sometimes depression. Even for those persons who do get adequate exposure to sun without sunscreen, vitamin D synthesizes in the skin decrease with age. The final step in activation of vitamin D to calcitriol, which is the active hormone of the vitamin, occurs in the kidney. In older persons, the kidneys have a reduced ability to convert vitamin D to calcitriol. This can affect calcium balance since calcitriol is a critical regulator of blood calcium levels. A deficiency of vitamin D leads to decreased calcium absorption and increased calcium loss from bones, to maintain normal blood calcium levels. Over time, this leads to the softening of the bone tissue known as osteomalacia in adults and rickets in children. Vitamin D deficiency also increases risk for osteoporosis and bone fractures in older adults. You can see on the slide sometimes the effect of osteoporosis on bone mass. So please be careful with that. And it's something that is recommended that I can recommend very well for balance to try to avoid breaking up the bones and loss balance is Tai Chi. This is something that I encourage you to practice. So few foods natural contain vitamin D, but we see fatty fish, egg yolks, and liver on this list. With the increased number of fortified foods now available, there are more foods containing vitamin D to choose from. As we age, the recommended intake increases, and a supplement may be necessary. If adequate fortified foods are not consumed, this will be a discussion that older adults should have with their healthcare provider. It's something I mentioned in the past. You need to talk about this with your medical provider. Other concern is vitamin B12.
Nelly, before you move, there was a question that came through. Can you expand on the risk of too much vitamin D?
That is something that your primary doctor can mention that with you. And it depends sometimes because the absorption level of the individuals, Patricia. So that's something that is referred to the primary doctor. And when they do something I I recommend to every one of us here in the webinar today is going to your primary doctor and have a blood panel one time per year. They're going to check all these levels of vitamins and deficiencies in your body, and they can tell you what are the pros, cons, and what are the needs that you need according to that panel. That suffice the answer. So for vitamin B12, the vitamin is only found naturally in foods of animal origin, and low intake is fairly common among older adults. But even with an adequate amount of vitamin B12 in the diet from meat, fish, poultry, eggs, and dairy, the ability to absorb this vitamin from these sources becomes very limited as we get older. And here is why. Vitamin B12, which is found naturally in foods from animal source, is bound to a protein molecule. That vitamin must be split off from the protein to be absorbed. This reaction takes place in the stomach and requires an acidic environment. Remember, we discussed this decreased stomach acidity being more prevalent in older persons. We already have mentioned that. This decrease of our ability to absorb naturally occurring vitamin B12 from animal foods, which cannot be easily separated from his protein unless it's an acidic environment. If older adults don't get this vitamin from fortified foods or supplements, their blood levels will decrease, placing them at risk for a deficiency. In contrast to the poor absorption of naturally occurring vitamin B12, absorption of the crystalline form does not decline with age, since it's not attached to a protein molecule. The crystalline form of the vitamin in fortified foods or as a multivitamin supplement is readily absorbed for all age. For many years, federal dietary guidelines have recommended that people over age 50 meet the recommended dietary allowance of vitamin B12, which is 2.4 micrograms per day, by eating foods fortified with vitamin B12 or by taking a multivitamin supplement. For most people with low vitamin B12 levels, eating 45 foods or taking a supplement will be adequate to normalize vitamin B12 status, and B12 injections are generally not required. So now we are going to move to zinc. The national surveys have found that 35 to 45% of adults aged 60 or older had zinc intakes below the estimated average requirement set by the Institute of Medicine. Even when taking into account zinc from dietary supplements, 20 to 25% of older adults still have inadequate zinc intakes. People living in food insecure homes where they don't always have access to an adequate amount of nutritious food are more likely to have an inadequate intake of zinc in their diets. Also at risk are vegetarians, since zinc for plant sources is less bioavailable than zinc from animal source due to the phytates in plants that bind zinc and prevent its absorption. In fact, vegetarians may require 50% more of the recommended dietary allowance for zinc than non-vegetarians to get enough absorbed into the bodies. Zinc supplements can interact with some medications, including certain antibiotics and diuretics that older adults commonly take. All other adults should ensure that the medications are reviewed by the pharmacist whenever they add or change a medication. This is very important. Older adults who are under stress, particularly those in the hospital, may be an increased risk for a zinc deficiency. Despite this concern, it's still worth noting that clinical zinc deficiencies are not typical. Older adults who eat a healthful diet that contains an adequate amount of food from all the food groups should have a sufficient intake of zinc. The problem is that so many people don't eat a healthy diet that meets their nutritional needs. So many high protein foods are a good source of zinc, along with whole grains and fortified foods. As noted previously, zinc from animal sources is much more bioavailable than zinc from plant sources, and higher intakes of plant sources of zinc are needed to make up for poor absorption. Zinc supplements can interfere with the absorption of other similar minerals such as copper, calcium, and iron, and are recommended as part of a healthy lifestyle. The reliable sources I recommended you to see is IDAS, that is the source of research here for the University of Florida. You can go to this website as IFAS, and there are several publications in any of these kind of questions that you have, like that you guys were asking about supplements, vitamins, deficiency, things like that. That are there. The website I already mentioned with the presentation My Plate. And I recommend as well the American Heart Association. They have very good information in these websites. Patricia, have you dropped those in the chat for the audience?
Yes, I just posted them.
Okay. So thank you so much. So let me know if there are something else, Patricia, in the chat.
Food came question, what foods have B12?
What kind of foods have B12? Okay, during the presentation, I start to mention a few of the vitamins and food that have the B12. So, for example, liver, mushrooms, shiitake mushrooms, any kind of mushroom has that, some cheese, seafood. Trying to have a lot of those has that. And okay, what else I can to tell you? Mainly those.
Is the My Plate website also appropriate for someone who's vegetarian or vegan?
There are a numerous diets. I have not explored that if somebody's vegan, there are you can put the information there and they can tell you, because there are certain substitutions to consider. And please explore and let me know, because that's a good thing I have not checked. Please let me know. That's I'm not so sure, so please share that with me later. I'm not so sure. But my plate has, for example, parents, older adults, you want to have a sometimes a celebration, a birthday. There is what I can provide. There are recipes, there are things for things like that. And the good thing about the website is the diets and the recommendations are based in the age of the individual. So that's magnificent, because the food that are suggesting is according to the age appropriate. And they have differentiate from the females and males, and sometimes for generics as well. So that's great. There are recipes for around the world. If you want to have something Asian, if you have want something that is Latin American, something that is European, there are several recipes there as well.
Okay. I also dropped a link to our nutrition webinars. We've worked with a lot of IFAS extension agents on a variety of nutrition related webinars, and there's one on the Mediterranean diet
Oh,
and how to
perfect.
incorporate the Mediterranean diet into your lifestyle. So if you follow that link, you'll see it's like I think it's like a 5-part webinar or something, and they really go into like what is the Mediterranean diet, the health benefits of it, and how to. They even do like recipe testing where they show you like different recipes you can do that have those nutritional guidelines for that.
And that is the only diet that is research fat-based that decrease Alzheimer, than dementia, and prevents cardiovascular diseases. That's the only research diet that we all should be trying. So yes.
Okay, I don't see any more questions. So before we let everybody else go, is there anything else you would like to add, Nelly?
No, I please, I encourage you to try to increase your intake of seafood protein, because the beneficial of those this protein is very well from what was the diet again? The Mediterranean diet.
And if you follow the link that I posted above,
The
it will be on that
Mediterranean diet.
page.
And yes, and start to maybe incorporate something for the Mediterranean diet is olive oil when we are cooking. That's a perfect. The DASH diet. The DASH diet doesn't have enough research. Only Caroline, the only one that has substantial research, and these are years and for many universities, is the Mediterranean diet.
There was a question about the recording. It will be posted on the Work Life website, and I dropped the link on the chat as well. So it'll take about 4 or 5 days, but we will post it on the recording of this webinar. We will post it on the Work Life website. And we do have one more webinar. Well, we have 2 more webinars coming up with you, Nelly: Aging and Finance and Health and
Yeah.
Medical Care. So do you want to give us like a little tease of what we can expect on the next
For financial management, next week I'm going to be sharing the presentation with Dr. Gillian and Marty, and we are going to be everything about money problems, money solutions. We are going to be talking about adequate insurance. We are going to be talking about assets, living wills, healthcare provider, things like that. And the last seminar I'm going to be giving to you is everything that is related to, we are going to be even talking to sensory, and we are going for different organs and parts in our body to see how anything that we ate affect us when we are aging. And even as a parents is something that we need to be checking, because during the age there are certain requirements of food that we don't take. And like I mentioned today in the webinar, tofu, a lot of people has no tried tofu. Do you guys know what is tofu?
Yeah,
Somebody
it's
knows what is
delicious.
tofu? by chance, you can share in the chat. So, tofu, soy.
Mm,
Okay, somebody has another option. So, and it's a lot of stuff that we don't even think to try, and we say we because it's not part of our eating habits and helps us to increase our guidelines and provide vitamins and nutrients that we don't even think in another food. Like, okay, chickpeas. That so we are talking about tofu, things like that. It's chickpeas. So, and that came from very fine from here from America, but has been incorporated very fast for the latest days. A lot of people start to take it in the daily tastes. So a lot of people doesn't like. There are a variety. So yes, it's a lot of stuff that we can try. If you don't like milk, yes, you can try soy, almond, but milk is essential. I remember I mentioned about the osteoporosis. So there are things that we need to still uh, consuming because it's required for us.
Okay, lovely. So I dropped the link in the chat for where you can go to register for the webinars. And the Asian and Finance one is coming up on September 18th, and the Health and Medical Care will be on September 25th.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so with that said, thank you so much, Nelly. I appreciate all the information that you've provided to us. And like I said, this webinar was recorded and we will upload it to the WorkLife website within the week.
Okay. No more questions. Thank you so much for everyone to share your lunch today with us.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good day. Bye, all.
Thank
You
you. Bye
too.
bye.